Africa's wildlife and natural wonders have captivated hearts for centuries, inspiring awe and a desire to protect these precious landscapes and species. Yet, the stories that fuel this passion often lack the voices of the people who know them best, the Africans themselves. Noel Koch and Pragna Koch, National Geographic explorers and filmmakers, saw this gap and took action. They founded Nature, Environment and Wildlife Filmmakers (NEWF), a bold initiative empowering Africa's next generation of storytellers to champion conservation through the power of film. But NEWF's ambition didn't stop there. To amplify their impact, they joined forces with the National Geographic Society to launch Africa Refocused. This program builds on NEWF's legacy, equipping emerging storytellers with the tools and skills they need to thrive in the industry. In November 2023, with Africa Refocused backing, NEWF took a giant leap forward. They opened the Sodwana-based storytelling, research, and dive center. This vibrant hub will be more than just a training ground. It is a place where local communities can enjoy swimming lessons and film screenings, while new fellows hone their skills in dive certification and underwater cinematography. I had the privilege of speaking with Noel and Pragna, the visionary founders of NEWF. They shared their inspiring vision for the future and how the Sodwana Bay Dive Center will become a cornerstone of African conservation, equipping scientists, conservationists, and storytellers with the know-how to protect this irreplaceable continent. So join me, Steve Mokaya, as we embark on a journey into the heart of Africa Refocused. This is a story of empowerment, of voices rising, and of a continent's future told through the eyes of its people. Along the way, we'll encounter Silindile Mbuyazi, Sodwana Bay's only certified black woman dive master, whose expertise serves as an anchor for the center. We'll also dive alongside National Geographic explorer, underwater filmmaker, and new fellow Jahawi Batoli, who will be sharing his wisdom as a dive instructor, wildlife photographer, and underwater cinematographer, guiding the new fellows with the grace of a manta ray.
I'm Pragna Koch, and I am the Executive Director of NEWF, which is Nature, Environment and Wildlife Filmmakers.
I'm Noel Koch. I'm one of the founders of NEWF. Both of us are filmmakers. We established NEWF back in 2017 after we had made our first conservation television series. And whilst it was successful in terms of ratings and that kind of stuff, it completely bankrupted us. And one of the main reasons why that happened was because one of our biggest challenges was access to wildlife, access to story. We had made a decision to make this TV series focused on Black African conservationist scientists and getting access to those people in the field was some of our biggest challenges here in South Africa particularly. And because of that, instead of walking away, we decided that, film and television is booming all across Africa, except in this particular genre. Africans let's say the African voice is not as prevalent as it should be. And because of that, we decided to start the organization NEWF so that young people trying to join this genre in the industry don't have to go through the challenges that we had experienced when we first started. The world uses so much of Africa's nature and wildlife. Yet back in 2017, Black African nature, environment, and wildlife filmmakers were rarer than most of the species conservationists were trying to save on the continent of Africa. And so we started NEWF so that we could encourage and to join forces with other like-minded organizations to encourage the African conservation voice to join this fight for the protection of our planet. Our work has been specifically focused on breaking down the barriers to access and building capacity amongst, particularly, not exclusively, but particularly amongst Black African storytellers. Also, a lot of the stories were not being told from our perspective. We were always being portrayed as the poacher, the pirate, the ranger, the guide, or the people who sing for you when you jump off your safari vehicle. Yet we know as a continent, we are so much more than that. We know that we have got the most unbelievable scientists and conservationists really dedicated to protecting wildlife, wildlands, ocean habitats all across the continent. And we needed to get those voices across. You know, Kenya particularly has always been at the forefront and has always had leading voices, African voices, for the protection of Africa's wildlife. Yet those were not coming across in the stories about Africa's wildlife that was being portrayed across the world. 38 of our 54 countries in Africa have a coastline. Are we as Africans telling enough stories about the ocean? Are we using the fact that we have all this access to the ocean as a resource for storytelling? Why do we have all these scientists and they can't even tell the world about their research because they haven't gone underwater to even experience? You know, we like to say that we can't say what we can't see. And so unless we experience the magic and the wonder and the awe and the beauty of what lies beneath the surface of the ocean, why would we care about it? Why would we want to protect it? And so that started the idea of what we now call NEWF Dive Lab. We then in 2019 started our very first NEWF Dive Lab, where we said we are gonna look for funding to provide funding to scientists, conservationists, and filmmakers across Africa, particularly Black African conservationists and filmmakers across Africa, to learn how to dive so that they can tell the stories of the science that they are studying, or they can tell these stories that will encourage people to protect the ocean. The venue we used to use for the training was in Sodwana Bay in South Africa for two reasons. One, it is one of the iconic locations for diving in South Africa and in Africa, particularly because of the crazy amount of diversity of fish, as well as the really great visibility that it has for most of the year. Secondly, you know, South Africa and Sodwana in particular has a very strong local dive market. And because of that, the costs are very low. They're not targeting an international dive market. And so the costs are extremely low. And that's why we would bring people from around the continent to come and learn to dive in Sodwana. We experienced a number of challenges, but one of the biggest challenges was cost, particularly accommodation costs. And this is where we met Slee, Silindile, who was working for one of the dive operators. On one of the days, the ladies from the Dive Master Lab confronted me and they said, you know, no, you and Pragna bring us from all across the continent. However, we are going to leave here after 3 months as dive master. What about Slee? She's teaching us, she's training us, yet when we leave here, she doesn't even have, she doesn't have a dive master, she doesn't have anything. Don't you think that that's unfair? And I sat and I thought about it and I thought, they're actually right. Made us stop and pause and say, okay, what are we doing wrong here? And this is where we sat down and spoke to Slee. And so we offered Slee an opportunity to start up what we call a NEWF community cinema in her area of Sodwana Bay. And that's where the idea of storytelling, research, and dive center in Sodwana Bay was born. We have partnered with Slee. We purchased the land her family has lived on. We purchased 50% of the land so that we could be an equal partner with her in this process.
Slee, along with many in our coastal community, harbored a deep fear of the ocean. However, haunted by the frequent tragedies of young lives lost at sea near her home, she knew something had to change. The death of her own brother by drowning was the final blow, spurring her to resign from her job and embark on a 4-year journey to conquer the very waters that stole so much. Through sheer perseverance, she not only mastered swimming and diving, but transformed herself into a proud dive master. Now, she dedicates her skills to empowering others, both new fellows and locals alike, by teaching them the life-saving skills of swimming and diving, determined to rewrite the narrative around the once treacherous waters.
Growing up in the family, the way they tell us, don't go near to the ocean, they scare us because there's so many stories here. They can tell you, if you go to the ocean, there is a king of Sangoma stays under the ocean, and the snake got 7 heads, they will take you. So all the time, if they drown, they don't come back, we don't find the body, we don't bury them. So we believe on that story. Once you go to the ocean, you drowned, the snake will come and take you, or the Sangoma's king, they will come and take you. No one knows how to swim in this area. Everyone's scared of the water, but we just like swim in the waves and in the sand, in the shallow, we don't go deeper. So once the waves took you for the high tide and you panic, you go. And the people, they can still see you going, but nobody can jump in and help you, So it's that the time you start to drown, and then you go for good. So many young ones die and we never bury them. So all the time I was in Joburg and they phoned me, my aunties, asleep. The one child drowned and they never come back. This thing was like in my heart, make my heart sore. Like, when are we gonna survive? We're not gonna have doctors, we're not gonna have scientists, we're not gonna have marine biologists, we're not gonna have all that kind in this area because it's the young ones, they're done with matrix. In my mind, I was like, who's gonna stop this? One of my brother drowned, started pain, like was really pain. I couldn't take it anymore. So in my mind, it was like, I'll be one of them that I'm gonna change my area. I said, I'll be one of them going to save my community. I was swimming for 6 months because I didn't know. I was drowning on that pool that she took me to learn how to do the scuba diving. I was drowning, I can be honest to you, but I never give up. I was waking up straight to drowning again. I never get, yes. And then she was keeping asking me, you think you can do this? I said to her, yes, I'll do it. She thought I would give up, but I never give up.
It allows us to, one, provide easier access into the ocean through the dive training. And then secondly, through wild science and other storytelling techniques, to tell the stories about the ocean and then share those stories when the fellows go back to their home countries, or whether it be in Sodwana Bay itself. But, to build on what Noel was saying, we have that center that we can now use as a resource, as the home to bring everybody to develop these ideas and to grow skills together.
Whenever somebody does any training with us, or if we fund them to produce a film, not a lab, we call them new fellows, right? And we've been building this community of new fellows all across Africa. Right now, I think we're sitting on about 250 from about 30 countries in Africa. It's not just the center, but it's the idea of this connected network of fellows across the continent supporting each other, making that change, bringing marine ecology, making it more accessible to the local communities, hearing the voices and using their research, using storytelling as a means to amplify the voices of those ocean communities. There's only so much you can tell from reading, from watching. until you actually experience something, you can't really truly understand it, and you can't really truly translate it. You can learn all these things in the laboratory. You can learn all the science that you want. And yes, you'd be learned and you'd be passionate. But so many of our fellows tell us that from the moment that they dive, from the moment that they go down there and witness it for the first time, so many of the marine biologists, let alone the storyteller, it changes something in them. And then the connection is so much deeper. It's so much more meaningful.
Jahawi Batoli, a seasoned underwater cinematographer and instructor, believes there is no substitute for first-hand experience when it comes to marine conservation. He argues that watching animals in their natural habitat, as the new diving center allows, has a far greater impact than simply reading about them in books. This immersive approach, he says, is key to transforming conservation efforts in Africa, particularly for marine life that often suffers from neglect due to misunderstanding or lack of knowledge.
It's one thing to study, to be a marine biologist from book, but when you actually get underwater and see these things and see what's happening, you see what happens here with the divers who are trained through NEWF. There's this new passion because you can't imagine just how beautiful it is under there. And all of a sudden that science starts to make sense in your head because you have a tangible image of it. On top of that, to go off what's been written in books, science is pushed by observation and either proving or disproving. And we know so little about the ocean that we need people out there because that's where incredible discoveries can come from. At the same time, we need to be pushing with a passion to conserve the ocean because so much of how this world functions is based on the ocean. So to be studying it, especially with climate change and these big climatic weather conditions, we need to be understanding our ocean is what regulates us. So that's where the work needs to be happening.
He has seen firsthand the devastating consequences of ignorance, particularly when it comes to creatures like sharks, often demonized as the ocean's villains. Batoli, who has spent 12 years documenting the lives of these animals, says the myths surrounding them are nothing but harmful lies, fueling an imbalance that threatens the very fabric of the marine ecosystem.
I love sharks. I spend a lot of time filming sharks. And there's a lot of misconceptions with sharks, and especially when tragedy strikes, because most of the time people have this fear of what they don't know or understand. There are unfortunate incidents. It's mainly misidentification. It's not that the shark is actively hunting the human. It's the shark is in bad visibility, it bumps up to something, it bites. We're very soft and we bleed very easily, so it's either there, or I know the ones, it's a lot of spear fishermen who get bitten, but you're there, you've got a fish you've shot a fish, that's causing an alarm signal, and sharks hone in on that. If sharks were really actively out to kill us, there would be thousands of people killed a day, like daily. And the thing is, think of the amount of surfers that are in the water every day, of people going snorkeling, just in the Andes alone, how many people are in the water. If sharks wanted to kill us, they have a full buffet, but they don't. For me, what's more scary is the fact that it's super hard to see sharks now in the ocean because they're being killed so quickly. And sharks keep the ocean in balance. So they prey on certain species, they keep other species in check. So imagine they prey on the species that eat coral, and if sharks went and the species that eat coral expands, then you've got all these fish eating the coral, and that could be damaging to your coral reefs, which other species survive on, especially our prey species that we like to eat. And then that's a fishery gone into collapse. So for me, the scariest thing is going diving when there are no sharks, because it means that that's an ecosystem that's not in balance. And we are happily killing them at an alarming rate, and no one is worried.
They say that 70% of the air that we breathe comes from the ocean. The ocean is that last frontier. It is the one place where we have to protect if we are going to try and stop this downward spiral that we've created for ourselves, right? All the crazy greed and disregard for the natural world.
It was wonderful having you with me for this episode, and I hope you enjoyed the podcast. I'm Steve Mokaya, and until next time, take care.